Welcome to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Today on the Jonathan Kinloch Show, we have Reverend Jerome Warfield, who is pastor of Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church in the Brightmoor community, as well as chairman of the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Public safety is a major concern for the citizens of the city of Detroit, as it is in any community. But right now, we're seeing an increase on major offenses on the streets of the city of Detroit. A lot of individuals are saying that we need to have more police officers hired. We also need to have more partnership and cooperations between the community and its residents. Well, we have here on the show an individual who has a unique vantage point because he is both community and a member and chairman of the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners, Reverend Jerome Warfield. I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan, good to have you. Good to be here. Glad to be here, man. I'm sorry, long day already.
Absolutely. But you know, it's a lot going on, a lot you have on your plate. You earlier in the summer partnered with a number of pastors and community groups to form the Detroit Watch initiative, and just a host of different issues that you're involved in, both as the pastor of Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church and chairman of the Board of Police Commissioners, and tackling this crime issue. Let me ask you, as a member of the Board of Police Commissioners, you all set the policy that guide and direct the police department. But unfortunately, you have budgets and resources being basically evaporating before your eyes. That's having a major impact on police services or public safety services. What would you say that you would like to see the discourse and the conversation to be had between the folks who are actually appropriating these resources?
I think it's an excellent question. I think when you look at Detroit, it's not unique that we're having some issues budget-wise. Over 20 communities that surround Detroit has just raised the question of public safety millages in order that they may raise up to the level that protect their citizens in their communities. So Detroit is not unique in that aspect of dwindling funds. As you know, the state of Michigan is losing population. The city of Detroit is certainly losing population. And as a result of that, a number of our tax dollars are leaving. The other issue that we have is that we struggle with an old, antiquated system as it relates to just our compensation structure. Some gains and some strides are being made right now as we speak to help reverse that and help change it. Right now, for city workers, we have a 96.5% benefit package to salary. And no matter what business you're in, that's just unsustainable. So we need to get to the point where we have a new structure in place that awards and rewards our police officers for doing the job, and public safety officials for doing the jobs that they need to do in order to call on our citizens' calls, but at the same time to make sure we are very efficient in carrying out our policies and making sure that we're using every dime of the taxpayers' money to its fullest benefit. And so those are some of the things we're working on right now.
Wouldn't you agree that that would be a different discussion as relates to pension and salary benefits from a separate discussion of actually appropriating funds for the hiring of more police officers to patrol the streets, to include how we actually deploy these officers? I mean, I do understand the cost of pension and wages, but we're seeing the city of Detroit in this conversation of issues of public safety taking money out of the public safety department. Is that something that makes sense at this time? I understand you have a conversation about dealing with those legacy costs, but you're taking money out of the public safety's budget. I think that's counterproductive.
No one wants to remove budget monies from public safety, period. But the hard reality is everyone has to share in this. I mean, that's just a hard reality and hard facts and something that has to take place. And so what we need to do, we need to come up with ways and measures of how we can minimize and mitigate as much as possible the fall or the extraction of those funds so that public safety is not impacted. As you know, Arthur Blackwell, former chair of the Police Commission and former chair of the Wayne County Board of Commissioners and I teamed up in an effort to try and offer a debate to happen between the citizens so that we could put more revenue on the table as it relates to officers, so we can put more officers in the neighborhood. We're still working on efforts to be able to do that. But going back to what you said earlier, this is going to take a multi-level approach. Certainly we got to do our job at the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners watching over the budgets. City Council has to make sure that the budgets that they pass are in balance, because I don't think unbalanced budgets are acceptable anymore throughout the state. And so as a result of that, citizens have to step up to the plate. We got to step up to the plate, and we got to watch over each other a little bit better. I think there are some things we can do to simplify it, but I think there are also some things from a professional standpoint that other agencies can do as we combine forces to help bring down these numbers, because it's a sad day in Detroit when the criminals know the type of crimes they can get away with because they understand the lack of response.
But let's not only talk about understanding the lack of response. We're telling them that we're not going to respond. You have the city administration that basically announced that we're not going to respond to certain burglar calls. We're changing our operations in this way, that way. The criminals, they have televisions and they have radios as well. So that did not make sense from my perspective, and you would think that the mayor and the police administration would have some conversation with the civilian board of police commission, because I'm sure you all would have told them, don't tell them our plan, don't tell them where we're reducing our actual policing.
Well, two things to that. First of all, the burglar alarm calls made sense, because actually that was taking police officers off the street. It took on average 45 minutes for a police officer to go to a false burglar alarm call, to investigate that, to fill out the paperwork before they can be released to go to another scene. So understanding and making agreements, I think we used a benchmark out of Boston and other cities Milwaukee and other cities that did the exact same thing. That made sense.
But no, I understand the modification of the proposal and policy, but the mere fact of announcing it.
Well, I think you have to announce it. No, two things. I think first of all, you do have to announce it because citizens need to know. Secondly, citizens already know that the response time is dramatically different.
Oh, absolutely.
That's not a major
we're feeling it.
I mean, if you live in my neighborhood, you understand that. Absolutely. If someone breaks in your house and you're not there and you get home and discover it, you understand it. Unfortunately, it's become our norm that shouldn't be the norm. That's why we need to get back to the point where we have responsive response times from our officers making calls to our citizens or responding to calls to our citizens, and that's what we're working to. I think something major is going on right now with the work rule changes. I think the chief is working with every available tool to try and get this thing solved.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about some of those tools, and particularly the call to have more officers on the street because of work rule changes and some of those work rule changes. We have here on the show Reverend Jerome Warfield of the Detroit Police Commissioners, and we'll continue that conversation on the other side. Welcome back. Reverend Warfield, the chief of police announced a work rule change a week or so ago, where he said that police officers now will be required to work 12-hour shifts. A couple of things I want to ask you. One, was that a policy that was endorsed by the police commission, actually voted on by the police commission? And what's your thought on that work rule change as it relates to police officers having to work those additional hours?
Two things as it relates to our policy making ability. We do not impact the day-to-day operations. In other words, we do not tell the chief what he has to do with his forces. That is a span of scope as it relates to his operations he has complete autonomy over. Secondly, as it relates to what he needed to do with that, we certainly support that.
No, I was speaking of the requirement. The actual requirement of the 12. If there's a policy change, according to the charter, and I know that you and I have had some discussions of what is the role of the police commissions in the past, because basically the police commission has been a rubber stamp. Though the police commission is the policy-making body for the police department, the chief does direct the day-to-day operations, but the policies are set by the police commission.
Yeah, but the hours of operations or the hours that the officers work is not policy.
Okay.
That's not policy. It falls under the day-to-day operations, and the chief have complete autonomy
Deployment
over
of the
that. Exactly,
officers.
and deployment
Okay.
and where they should go and when they should be there. So that's clearly under his preview to do that. Do we support that?
As citizens, did he ask?
Oh, absolutely.
Right,
The chief and the board of police commissioners have a very close working relationship,
That's good.
and a close working relationship doesn't mean that we agree all the time. But we have, acknowledged to agree to disagree, and we move forward for the betterment of the entire citizenry of the city of Detroit. And so we support the shifts. Whatever we can do to get more officers on the street, we support that. What's interesting about that change, though, in the work rule changes, and he said this at the city council table, at best, we should be able to put about 124 more officers out there. What we need, though, is probably another 500 officers out there. And so you still have this gap, if you will, of how do we fill these gaps. Our men and women in blue work extremely hard. I've gone to roll calls ever since the announcement was made about their pay cut. They show up. They're not the happiest right now. Neither would you be if you had to pay. You're getting paid less. Right, exactly. You're getting paid less once you got paid more in benefits. Absolutely. But they're professionals, and they're doing what they need to do to protect them. So for the citizens who are out there who are watching your show, when you see a police officer, you ought to congratulate them and thank them for the job that they're doing under immense pressure.
Absolutely. Also, I want to talk about the issue surrounding community policing in the city of Detroit, and particularly the many hats that you wear. You are a strong advocate for police officers. One thing I will have to say is that since you've been on the commission, you've asked a lot of questions that previously were not asked. You have really pushed the edge on making sure that the mayor and the administration realize that the police commission has a role and police operation oversight. So I want to commend you there. But also there has been initially some plans that have been put in place where you have the state of Michigan state troopers now patrolling the city of Detroit streets, as well as you have the secondary roads being patrolled by the Wayne County Sheriff Department. Is raising some concerns in the community about the relationship between those entities that have not previously done police work in that way in this community.
You bring up an excellent point. As a matter of fact, that has come up at our meetings. And on September the 13th at 6 o'clock p.m., and we'll get the location out to you and your audience, we're going to have a meeting with all of the agencies, the police agencies that cover the city of Detroit, so that we can talk about what is an interagency working agreement. What are the responsibilities of the Wayne County Sheriff versus the state police versus Detroit police? But more importantly, I think you hit a key point. If citizens feel that their interactions with a law enforcement agency is less than optimal, then where do they go to get their case heard? With the Detroit Police, we know they come to the Detroit Police Commission and our Office of Chief Investigation, and we investigate every case. Is that true for Wayne County Sheriff, for citizens who interact with them in Detroit, State Police, FBI, ATF? We need to come up with a framework, if you will, that regardless of who's patrolling the streets of the city of Detroit, that the citizens' rights are protected.
Mechanism,
as a communication. Right. So we're going to talk about that at that meeting on September the 13th, and so we want citizens to come out. We're going to have a great delivery.
Who have you invited?
We've invited the sheriff, Sheriff Benny Napoleon. He's going to be there. The chief of police will be there. We've also asked the colonel from the state police to be there. Wayne State University Police will be there because they interact a lot. Yeah, great police department. They will be there as well. We're asking for the U.S. Attorney, Barbara McQuaid, to be there, as well as FBI representative and ATF representative to be there.
So
because we know some ingredients.
The entire law enforcement community will be in the house. Now, have you received any complaints now that you have these folks crossing jurisdictions? Have there been any arising complaints as it relates to these agencies currently operating on the streets?
We absolutely have not had any rise in complaints, but we do know that there's concern out there. And what we want to do, we want to put the issue out there before we start having complaints. And we want to build a framework to make sure that if, as more agencies come into the city to protect the citizens, that we have an infrastructure in place so that citizens' rights are protected. So we don't want to be reactionary. We want to be proactive in this, and that's what we're going to talk about.
And so you've gotten some positive response in that these law enforcement agencies will actually be present at the September 13th
Absolutely,
meeting.
absolutely. And just as an example, I know over in the community where I pastor, in the Brightmoor community, I know we have an interagency agreement between ATF, FBI, State Police, and Detroit Police Department as relates to, going after dope houses and other high-profile crimes like that. They work very closely with that community over there in coordinated efforts to make sure that work is done. We want to make sure that same approach is spread throughout the entire city of Detroit.
Well, we're going to take a break, and on the other side, we're going to talk about some of the initiatives that are currently taking place in the city of Detroit to assist law enforcement in their efforts in our community, as well as get some ideas and recommendations from Pastor Warfield on what you can do in your community to assist law enforcement. We'll be right back on the other side of this break. Welcome back to the Jonathan Kinloch Show. Pastor Warfield, as I said earlier in the show, you wear a number of hats in the community. You're pastor of Mount Vernon Missionary Baptist Church, chairman of the Board of Police Commissioners, but also you brought together recently a number of individuals in the community and clergy to patrol the city streets. A lot of folks in the community are saying, what can they do? What can they do to assist law enforcement in pushing back this onslaught of crime in their local communities? What suggestion would you have for them?
Well, thank you. And there are a number of groups who are out there who are doing a great job. Here's what citizens can do. First of all, they can just be engaged with one another. Know who's staying next door to you. Know who your neighbors are. We need to reinvigorate the block clubs again, where citizens come together and talk about who's on their block, what cars are going up and down the street. I know in my mom's neighborhood on the northwest side of Detroit, they have a great block club just off of 8 Mile in the Huntington Street area, where they come together and they're able to pinpoint if someone shouldn't be there. So just staying engaged, keeping your porch light on means a lot. Lighting up around your house, because certainly we know that criminals like to do their deeds, when it's dark, when they're less susceptible. In addition to that, attending the Board of Police Commissioners meeting. We want citizens to come to our commission meetings in order that we may know what's going on in their neighborhoods and we can give special attention to those areas. Our meetings are held every Thursday, 3:00 p.m. at the 1300 Bobium, the police headquarters, with the exception of the second Thursday of every month. We're out in the community, and that schedule is posted on our website. And so we want people to come to us as well so we can give them advice. And then contact the Detroit Police Department. We have Deputy Chief Melvin Turner, who will actually come to your neighborhood and tell you what you can do from a neighborhood perspective to keep yourself safe and to keep your community safe.
How effective have these efforts been, specifically the Detroit Works Detroit Nights Walk program? And it was met with a lot of excitement. And are those type of initiatives actually working in addressing some of these issues in communities?
I think absolutely. I think what it does more than anything else, it diminishes that stem or that environment of apathy. And when people see other folks involved, it causes them to want to get involved. The thing that we've lost in Detroit somewhat is our righteous indignation. The fact that we don't get as upset about some things. A kid gets shot now and it's like, oh, no big deal. Whereas back in the day when you and I grew up, a child got shot and it was a major to-do. And so we got to get back to the point where our level of righteous indignation is raised extremely high. And I think these efforts get those individuals involved to say, look, I'm not out there by myself. There are other individuals that are concerned as I am concerned. So when we do our walks, it's amazing the number of people that come up to us and say, what can I do to get involved? What can I do to help you guys out? And so we see a lot of interest generated that way. You look at Detroit 300, you look at Men on Patrol, you look at the AWARE program on the east side. So these programs actually make a huge difference, absolutely.
how are in law enforcement, like I said, you wear two hats, community hat as well as chairman of the police commission. How is law enforcement dealing with this no snitch rule, which I don't get? You're being terrorized in your community, and you have this feeling from some in the community that a no snitch rule. How is that being met, and how are you all responding to that as both law enforcement and community groups that are out there actually trying to get folks to assist in law enforcement initiatives in the community?
Right, that message is drilled down over and over again during our Board of Police Commissioners meeting. Even the chief, I think some time ago, gave a press conference specifically on the fact that you got to tell what's going on. Forget about snitching, it's about tell. Even Minister Malik Shabazz, and I won't use his language, but he said you got to tell. Forget snitching, you got to tell. Why? Because it's about our own survival. At some point, we got to recognize that these are our grandchildren, our nieces, our nephews, our brothers, our sisters that's committing this stuff. And we have to say, look, we have a responsibility, I have a responsibility to turn people in who are violating our safety. And I love you when I show you how much I care by saying I don't want you doing this to yourself, let alone someone else. And so that message is continuing being talked about in our meetings, and I know the chief reports that at every meeting, every public meeting he goes to, talks about how you gotta step up to the plate, and you got to be accountable, and you got to tell what's going on in your neighborhood.
You know, when I was growing up, you had a number of initiatives that was being led by the Detroit Police Department and trying to work with young people. The junior police cadet that was led by Curtis Perry over at Northwestern High School. I was a junior police cadet. It also created an opportunity for young people to work during the summer and assisting and building relationships with seniors and other citizens around the city of Detroit where they were assigned. Is there an ongoing continuation of this partnership and building bridges with young people in the city of Detroit? You also had the PAL program that was extremely large and beneficial to the community over the years. And are there resources still there to support these programs that definitely had a positive impact on me?
Well, I smile when you said the Detroit Police Explorers, because in 1980, I was a police explorer as well, out of the 10th precinct.
I was a junior police cadet doing summer.
And so you were in the summer, but those programs are still ongoing. We had a bunch of kids working as police cadets this summer. The Police Explorer program at many of the precincts across the city of Detroit are still in place. So those programs are out there to grab young people. And we also have the Detroit Police Citizens Academy that teaches and trains citizens how to be more alert and how to be partners with the police department as well.
We weren't able to touch on the fact that the other thing, the initiative of helping young people get employed this past summer. I think that was commendable. I saw a lot of it in the news media, and we're almost out of time. Can you briefly give us an update on that?
Oh, absolutely. We actually hired 175 kids this summer to work in a number of different areas throughout the city of Detroit. Obviously, they work for the Detroit Police Department, but they also work for lawyers, for judges. They worked in the community. They work for daycare centers. Here's the number one thing about this. It's a public safety issue when our kids are working. Why? Because we're showing them an alternative to street life. We're showing them the value of earning $1. And so just some amazing results.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on. And you're an individual who actually practice what you preach. You're engaged and you're out there. And I definitely going to continue to have dialogue with you.
Keep me in your prayers, brother. I need that.
I know of no safe repository of the ultimate power of society but the people. If we think them not enlightened enough, the remedy is not to take power from them, but to inform them by education. That's what I hope we do here each week on the Jonathan Kinloch Show, educate you and inform you on issues that are important to all of us around here. Until next week, same time, same station, have a great week.